Hello, so welcome back. I'm here with our panelists and dive into the second panel of the day. The first panel was extremely interesting, especially for me. I found it vastly interesting to talk about education today. And as Steffi, who is as well in this panel, said, the thing that we need to learn is how to deal with change. And I think that, yeah, that really resonated with me. But today, now we're going to go into a topic that is a little bit more tangible and a little bit about our local society as such. We have three lovely panelists for us that will be able to share their thoughts on urban innovation, but as well as SDGs in our community as such. We have David Leonard from Modul, and he is a researcher in public government and development. So he will be representing kind of like the university sector in that sense. We have someone from the Austrian Development Bank, Sophie who is as well in charge of development, I guess, political development. Sorry, again from ISAC in Europe to talk about as the largest youth-led organization in Europe. Actually, what are we doing that is tangible in our cities, and what do you think about it? So let's dive in. I would like every single panelist to maybe introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they are doing in their organization. Maybe we can start with Sophie.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on this panel. I'm excited to see what comes out of it. I work for the Development Bank of the Development Policy Unit. So basically, I'm in charge of the impact assessment of our project. So we track the of the development effects of each transaction as we evaluate our portfolio yearly on basis of development effects. And on the other hand, we also a strategic unit. So we draw up the strategy of the development bank, its connection to the SDGs, and how we work towards achieving the SDGs. So I'm gonna be excited to hear what others do, but I'm happy to share how we approach this with the bank.
Thank you very much. How about Mr. Leonard? David?
Yeah, good afternoon. So I'm a lecturer at Modul University, a lecturer in political economy. So most of what I teach is economics related. I teach at all different levels, foundation program, undergrad level, and at the master's level, in various courses relating to, particularly with an economic focus. And one of the things I'm most proud of is we introduced a sustainability literacy course, which we've made mandatory for all of our undergrad students. So this is where a lot of my focus lies. In addition to that, I'm the sustainability manager at the university, which gives me the responsibility for creating our sustainability report, measuring various impacts around the university, and contributing to various ranking schemes, such as the Times Higher Education Impact and the Green Metric and various other schemes.
Thank you. And last but not least, my colleague Stephanie.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie. I'm 23 years old and I'm currently in ISAC already for around 5 years. And now since August, I have moved to the Czech Republic. Has been in the news for not so good things lately, but however, I'm working now on the regional level of ISAC with partners. So actually my role is to work in business development and to build and maintain partnerships within the region, which is a very interesting connection to the topic as well, because in the end, in ISAC, without partnerships, things wouldn't work. So it's about as well how can we move towards fulfilling the SDGs while with our partners together to as well enable youth to have an impact.
Thank you. Yeah, so now that we have all of our panelists introduced, I'm going to dive into the first question, which I think relates a lot to all of your introductions actually today, is how can we raise awareness about the Agenda 2030, especially to young people who ultimately will be the global workforce in 2030? And I would like to start with Stephanie.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so when it comes to the 2030 agenda, on one hand side, still many people don't know about it. That's where it starts. And then also we have many people that are maybe more skeptical towards if that is really needed or if it is as urgent as we are seeing that it is. And then on the other hand, we have maybe not very agile education systems. So if we're talking about youth contribution and we're talking about the SDGs, many people reduce it to if you want climate change to slow down, it is only about if you turn off the tap while brushing your teeth. So it's being reduced to these very basic things that are in the end not the main contributors. And then we're lacking to see what are the things that really can do and where can youth actually be on the table that can make a bigger impact. So it's about how can we connect all the that are part of it. How can we connect schools? How can we connect governmental, non-governmental organizations? Also, how can we connect companies to actually then come together to make something? How can we give youth the opportunity to co-create something as well, as it's about, as we're always talking about their future in the end of the day.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I would actually like to pull in David to ask what you guys are actually doing, because now we're talking about, okay, as Steffi mentioned, how are we bringing youth to the table, how are we educating them, how are we putting in schools, and as you mentioned before, Module is actually doing that actively and recognizing that this is something that is needed. Maybe you can touch on the topic.
Right, so potentially a business-oriented university, and we believe that sustainability is relevant to all of the programs that we offer. As for raising awareness of the SDGs, well, as an educator, I do expose my students to the SDGs, but I encourage them to approach them in a critical way. We, as an institution, we don't advocate for the SDGs as a whole, because within academic communities, at least those with some ecological awareness, it's widely acknowledged that this is actually an incoherent list of objectives. There are direct contradictions within there. The most glaring one being whether we can have reach our ecological goals at the same time as promoting aggregate economic growth. Beyond that, the list, well, although they're called goals, in fact, this list actually conflates goals with strategies, ends with means. Some of them up there, we would probably all agree are absolutely goals, things that are valuable in and unto themselves. Certainly all of the social goals. When it comes to environmental goals, well, the anthropocentric worldview which underpins the SDGs, in fact, this would rather regard the ecological goals as just being means of achieving human well-being. And I think some people might disagree on that, of course. Any vegans in the room might disagree with this anthropocentric perspective. When it comes to the economic goals, though, I think we would all agree that these are not goals unto themselves. We don't want growth for the sake of growth. We don't want innovation for the sake of innovation. We only want these things if and when they actually contribute to our actual goals of human well-being. What does this list has not been divinely inspired, right? This is the result of a political compromise. So I encourage my students to approach these very critically and, well, to think of them like the 10 Commandments, right? There's a whole lot of good stuff in there, but very few of us would say that the 10 Commandments are the 10 most important things we should do. And I would suggest that any individual that closely examines these goals will find that their own list of priorities for this world, hopefully they overlap heavily with the SDGs, but they won't directly align. And of course, we can only advocate strongly for things that we truly believe in. So my advice would not be to raise awareness of the SDGs as a whole, but to choose those particular elements which are of particular importance to you and seek out those individually, or perhaps a combination of the goals. Yeah, we need to prioritize, right? This list is often talked about as a roadmap. but a roadmap needs to tell you where to go first. And unfortunately, there's nowhere we ought to prioritize our actions. This is a weakness of, well, the weak sustainability conception, which sees sustainability as these three interlocking circles, yet which are somehow independent of each other. This is inconsistent. This is incoherent. This is not the way the world works. The strong sustainability perspective coming out of sort of ecological economic worldviews, which sees the three rings as concentric circles, recognizing the environment as the foundational system on which our society is built, and then that the economy is a mere subsystem of that. This helps us to prioritize where we actually need to direct our actions. As for how we engage the youth, well, what I find is simply making them aware of the status quo with respect to some of these goals is sufficient to deeply offend their most basic sensibilities. Many of my students are completely unaware of the state of suffering in many parts of the world, and simply raising their attention to that is enough, perhaps not to inspire action, but to certainly arouse their interest in the topics.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I would also like to point out to everyone that this is the interesting stuff, that like this is why we have a panel discussion, so that we can talk about it in different spheres and have different opinions as well. So based on what David said, I would actually like to know what Sophie thinks in terms of specific SDGs maybe Austria is doing, and more specifically what you're doing in your project in terms of implementing specific SDGs in Austria or in Vienna today.
Yeah. So that's actually exactly the point I wanted to make. And also what the approach OUP took is, I also don't think it makes, I mean, the 17 SDGs, it's a very, very broad agenda with a huge amount of targets. And so it's very important to prioritize and match that or map that with your core activities, these core competencies, to really be able to contribute expertise and work towards the goals effectively, right? So what we did at when we tried to match our SDG contributions is we looked at our investment strategy. We had an overall strategy for the bank. We focus on renewable energy and climate protection, which is 13, and then on job creation, SDG 8, and infrastructure and industry, SDG 9. This is basically where we invest in, what our portfolio looks like, and how we deploy our resources. So where we can do the most. But we went beyond that, not just looking at the headlines, but really diving into the catalog of the sub-targets, where you can see what measurable targets you can get out. Like, how can you track the program? You can track that along a headline. You need certain indicators, metrics, to see if your goal, if your strategy. So after mapping those SDGs, those 4 or 5, we really look at our projects along these sub-targets, and see if we progress each year, right, in those certain ones. I think institutions try to cover all 17 SDGs, because in the end they lose focus, and that was very important to us, that we really state clearly what matches our strategy, where do we deploy our resources, and what potency in our work.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
May I interrupt? It occurs to me that I might not have completely answered your question, because you asked me about what universities can do in particular, and I'd like to share a bit more on that if I have a moment. So, I mean, we should look at the core competencies of universities, of course, as Sophie suggested, focus on your core competencies. So what are they? Well, in particular, very often when we approach education, we only focus on the educational inputs, what we're trying to do without really measuring the results. So we of course have the objective that we make our students more aware about sustainability. As a result of this, we've been engaging with the sustainability literacy test, the SULI test, endorsed by the Copernicus Alliance, for about the last 5 years, and we require all of our students at orientation to take this test and then again at graduation, not as an assessment of them. This doesn't go on academic transcripts or anything. I'm the only one who sees the data, in fact, but to assess ourselves and to see how well we are doing. Initially, the progress was rather minimal, and this has given us the information that we've needed to adapt some of our courses, to add this new course that I mentioned, and to try to integrate sustainability better into the rest of our teaching. In terms of research, well, research is valuable. Information is power, and but what is particularly important here is that we make our research findings available if they're going to have an impact in the world. So we're seeing an increase here at the university, not as fast as I would like, but a shift towards open access publishing. It's not much good creating valuable information if we're locking it up behind paywalls and it's inaccessible to people in developing countries. So I think this is the most important thing that we can do in terms of research. And we need to work in a more interdisciplinary way. We need to break down the traditional borders of the departments in order to integrate the various knowledge. And this is truly the strength of the SDGs, is it makes us aware that we need to tackle all these different things at different times, drawing on different knowledge sources simultaneously. Further than that, well, university quite a trusted role in the society, where we're regarded as quite impartial compared with, well, often governmental or private organizations. And so we have a key role to play in networking and outreach as well. And it's well, not to mention our operations. We have to make sure that we're leading by example and that we are not being wasteful, for instance, within our operations. So we try to measure everything that we can, and we try to be transparent about these to allow people to our stakeholders to make good decisions based on that information.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there's a lot that I'm thinking right now, that's why, because there was just a lot of really good stuff there. But I would like to go into our second question, which is very much connected with a lot of what we're talking now. And I'd actually like Stephanie to be the first one to answer, which is, who do you think, as a young person and as part of the world's youth SDG movement, let's say, are the key actors in making sure that we can achieve the SDGs to the best of our abilities in the way that is most urgent right now?
Mm-hmm. So who is the
who are the key actors in your opinion?
Mm-hmm. Yes. That is actually a very interesting question, because also as ISAC, we have been doing already for the second time, the first time in 2016 and the second time 2019-2020, something called the YouthSpeak Survey. And it was a survey that aimed to cover wide parts of the globe from a lot of different countries to get insights on youth and what they believe, whether the world will be a better place, or whether education is going to move them towards what they need for the world of tomorrow, whether they believe in climate change, or what should be the role in there. And this year, 7,000 responses from 157 countries. And there they clearly stated that in this world, the people that can have the most impact are not necessarily the government, but more so social organizations, NGOs, also educational institutions, and youth organizations, for example, because currently right now, it is not enough what is being imposed by the government, and it is not the thing that is currently leading us to achieving the targets that we will be needing to achieve. So that was a very interesting point, that youth is seeing, the youth is more towards, I want to take action and we need to do something, and that they're seeing that non-governmental organizations, they have the power to do that. But then on the other hand side, we're looking into the part that it can be very hard for them to survive. That is, we're seeing this, I think, right now as well, in COVID times, where it is not necessarily the easiest for non-governmental organizations that do strive for something that might not be monetizable as easy as other organizations. It can be very hard to survive, and is not always the number one interest to protect these. So that is also a question of how can we actually find common ground on achieving what needs to be achieved and get together for this.
Thank you very much. I would actually be very interested to know what Sophie has to say about that.
When I read the question, I was already wondering if there are main actors, because somehow with an agenda like the Agenda 2030 and the goal set or framework of the SDGs, person is a main actor, and individual contributions are significant to achieve something this broad and overarching. And Stephanie said before, looking for the and just solely being aware of, I don't know, turning off the electricity more frequently. I think it does start from there. Like, of course, it's so NGOs, any kind of stake organizations, this forum, for example, all very, very, very important. But the common effort starts at the individual too. And I think, and if the individual starts being aware, I don't know, take more care of their trash or reduce plastic, whatever, it is a starting point. So at the base, everyone is a major actor in all of this. We cannot neglect the role of the government, because in the sense of supporting society and business, but also raise awareness, government is crucial, and the government should have the vision to support that. And obviously, from OEB's perspective, and from being a development bank, development finance institutions, our reason why we're here and what we're doing is that a lot of capital is needed to achieve these. A lot of financial resources are needed to for the SDGs, and state budgets cannot, and it's proven that state budgets alone cannot finance this. So we need to include the private sector. We need to raise awareness. Well, that's our mandate. We try to mobilize the private sector in also working towards the SDGs.
I have a follow-up question to that, which is, currently in Austria, who do you see are the key actors? So not so much who should be, but who currently are in terms of the awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals, and as well working towards its implementation. And as well, in your professional opinion, how can Austria contribute to the actual global achievement of these goals?
Was that directed at me? Sorry.
No, totally, sorry. A follow-up question to, I'm sorry.
You said the key challenges?
No, so who, in your opinion right now, are the current actors? So you told us about who you think the actors should be, and in general, and ideally how it is, but right now in Austria, who do you see the current actors are? But as well, in your professional opinion, how do you think Austria is contributing to the achievement of the global ranking of the Sustainable Development Goals, or the achievement? Do you think as a nation that we will be able to make a significant impact in the achievement of it on a global level?
Well, I mean, the point I made before are obviously universal, so they also, I can just point them down to Austria. key actors. I mean, as Austria has competencies when it comes to the climate-related goals, and I think that Austria really tries to SDG focus there, which I very appreciate seeing, and there are various stakeholders and actors that think that is highly important and work towards that, which where it comes back to the focus. So Austria has sort of focused on a couple of areas that it's good in its core competencies. So you can't pinpoint it down to just name a few. Like we have so many from government ministries that have their parts in the whole process, as well as institutions, banks, not just a development bank, but also private banks in a way. Of course, universities, research institutions, and any initiative really that brings up SDGs, that raises awareness. What you see is when you go out of your work bubble of development work, people don't know what the SDGs are, and it's sometimes when it's something you work with daily, it seems so obvious that everyone around you knows what you're talking about, and then you sit at a private dinner and you somehow you talking about, and you see that it's really just your bubble and very hard and to get the SDGs more out there. And although everyone speaks about it, tries to publish about it, tries to have conferences and forums about it, but it still hasn't really arrived in society as a concept. Or that's my personal view. Yeah.
No, I agree with you because I think that as well it's very sector specific. So I think that depending on which sector you come from, it's actually had very different times of when the discussion of the implementation of SDGs has actually arrived to that sector. And we do see that, 5 years in, some sectors have not yet to touch on the topic. Yeah. So on that, maybe David, you could tell us your opinion. What do you think are the challenges of the implementation? I know you talked about it a little bit before about the flaws in the framework or the agenda itself, but what do you see as the key challenges in the implementation?
Just first, let me absolutely agree with my colleagues here on the previous question in terms of the major actors. It truly is everyone. The action needs to happen at the ground floor, and I've got some data to share on that. I asked my students to calculate their ecological footprint, which they do. I then asked them to, and I've done this over the last 2 days, and I'm going to be doing it again with another group at 1:30. I then asked them to calculate it again, putting in the details of a lifestyle that they could easily live now without making major sacrifices. And what I typically find is that they have 30% reduction in their ecological footprint without making any major sacrifices to their lifestyle, which is phenomenal, right? That's essentially all we have to do. So key information out there. This is the question, and I agree. The NGOs and the educational institutions play a key role here. Key challenges. Okay. It is impossible for this world to be ecologically sustainable until we get rid of our debt-based monetary system. It is impossible. Do I have 2 minutes to explain why?
Yes.
All of our money is created as debt. About 97% of it. That means that whenever new money is created as debt by people taking loans. The problem is that what is created is not just the principal to repay the loan. Well, all that's created is the principal, but there's of course interest due on all of this money, which means that we don't only create the same amount of debt as money, we create more debt than money. In the current system, we cannot get rid of debt unless we get rid of all of our money, and then we're still going to have debt. Now, the problem with this is that the money does not exist yet to pay for the debt. to pay for the interest which is owed, which means that unless we constantly create more money, then there'll be widespread bankruptcies and defaults, which of course would be catastrophic for human well-being. So we have a system where we must constantly increase the monetary supply. We know in this finite world that we cannot continually increase the production of goods and services, and at some point we're going to have to stabilize this. Regardless how circular our economy becomes, we cannot grow forever. And what that means is that we're going to have a fixed amount of stuff with an increasing monetary supply. This, of course, means rampant inflation, which is all the incentive we need to drive increasing consumption. While we maintain this type of monetary system, it is impossible for us to reach ecological sustainability. This means our dollars are flawed, our euros are flawed. These have worked well in the past when we had a growing economy, but these types of monetary systems are completely unable to cope with the steady state in economy, which we must sometime, and hopefully very soon, be living in. The problem is there is absolutely zero political will to deal with this topic. The most powerful actors, the bankers, are certainly absolutely unwilling to cede this power of money creation. There is zero awareness of this in the community. They are unaware of the fact that money is debt. And I'm sure you're well educated, and you might just ask yourself, how is it that you've gone to this point using money every day and yet are unaware that our money represents debt? Why has this been omitted from your syllabi at various levels of studies? It's because it's a big scam, and it's absolutely abhorrent to people when they learn about it for the first time. I'm not confident at all that we're going to see a political resolution here. I see the only potential as that we displace this system by moving to some alternative, such as, for instance, some cryptocurrency which meets the needs of a steady state economy. This is the biggest impediment to ecological sustainability in this world. And it's a shame that other than the positive money movement in the UK, I know of no political organizations which are actually trying to further this cause. That's a problem.
Thank you. Sophie, do you have anything to respond to that?
Well, I had my own set of key challenges drawn up, which are on a more technical note, which is going back to the point of lack of commitment. To be fair, because we talked so much about awareness raising and the role of stakeholders to raise awareness, which is nice that the SDGs do provide the graphics and the story, and essentially is the action, right? And so what is to be seen is that even policy makers, decision makers use the SDGs, I don't know, use it like a commercial tool, like a marketing tool, but when you want to pin it down back to action, where you deploy policies or activities, and then obviously important is to be able to monitor them, to evaluate them, to no longer fit as we see now, especially, but we are living in an ever-changing environment, and it's crucial for us to adapt quickly and based on information. And what I've been seeing a lot is talking about what their plans are to do something, but not monitoring it, not collecting data on it, not showing progress on it, and not diverting from it if it doesn't work, or even talk about it if it doesn't work, right? So I feel like these structured processes to actually go to the goal and actually achieve the goal of away than from just stating we want to achieve the goal is really lacking. There are not many institutions that can show how, just basic project management in the end, how they're planning step by step to get where they want or said they want to be, right? And this goes back also then to the whole discussion about accountability. A lot of talk and not a lot of act management, which needs continuous monitoring, evaluation, reevaluation, adaptation. That I've seen in the work environment. Obviously going a little more on the technical side now than the previous talk. But yeah, that's something I am really challenged with when it comes to SDGs.
Yes.
And that's what I think that the agenda is inflated because, yeah, it's way too much used as a communication tool rather than an action tool, you know?
Mhm. Yes. I would actually like to pick up a little bit of what you said, which is how a lot of like the failed implementation of SDGs is around project management. I actually would like to ask Stephanie what they at ISAC are doing, given that we or they are a youth organization that helps the promotion of the SDGs and have made projects out of them. Like, what is your experience with that? But as well, what are the key challenges that come with that?
Mhm. Thank you so much. So first of all, maybe the whole purpose of why we have ISAC, why we do what we do, is to develop the young leaders of the future. Because we do believe that if people live a certain set of values and if they have a certain set of skills, they will be able, no matter what they do, because we're defining leadership as if you're in a big multinational as the C-suite, whereas being a leader is also taking basic consumer decisions every day, the way you raise your children or whatever you interact with on a daily basis, that is all leadership. We are just not talking about it and we're just not seeing it in that way. But essentially, that's the goal of ISAC and that's the mission of it. So, and with this being said, of course, we saw our role as in like the SDGs and bringing the SDGs to youth as a very big one, which is why on the Youth Action Summit in December 15 or 16, if I remember correctly, we committed as ISAC towards contributing to the SDGs and raising awareness among youth and motivating them to take action. So on the one hand side, this is why we are sitting here, because this is about our YouthSpeak Forum and our Youth for Global Goals initiatives. On the other hand side, this is about sending our young people from all around the world to different places, to having them interact with different cultures and bringing awareness to the very local places. So whether that's in Austria, where we're having people talking about culture and talking about the raising awareness on different countries and realities in schools, to actually locally working on different environmental projects, such as recycling or upcycling in communities in different countries that are not used to the idea of recycling. So essentially with this, we're showing young people that they can not only go somewhere to develop themselves, but they can also tackle something and they can start. And it doesn't only need to be very high organizations that are doing something, but everyone can start from somewhere and everyone can raise the awareness. And that's also why we're running YouthSpeak Forum, because we want them to have a voice and we want people to talk about it and then to take action on it. And we've seen a lot of people then walking out and actually, whether they have founded a startup that aims to do something better, whether they have had experiences with ISAC or simply go somewhere else just to take that further. That is our mission in terms of bringing the SDGs further.
Thank you very much. So we are almost coming to the end. We have time for one more question to be answered by every single one of you. And my last question would be, from in the sector that you're working in right now in your current job, from 2015 until today, so we're 5 years in, what do you think the SDGs have done so far? Maybe we can start with Stephanie.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so what the SDGs have done so far, I do think that we are improving in the terms of awareness. It's not going in a level that it should be or that we would like it to be, but at the same time we cannot neglect that it hasn't improved. And also, if we're comparing this to the Millennium Development Goals, we did take one big step into that, and yet it is still more of a communication tool, and it is not yet translated into enough actions. But also looking now at COVID and having it accelerate a lot of different topics, and also looking how fast some points of the climate. I still remember the dolphins in Venice and these things, how fast some things recovered. That has also brought up more conversation about climate change. So there's more conversations happening, yet the action and the individual, maybe small sacrifices that need to be done, and also the corporate sacrifices that will need to be done, and the way of changing mindset that is yet to follow. And that is very important for all of the people to be part of this, to actually now turn the conversation into action.
Thank you very much. David?
Having started with a critique of the SDGs, I absolutely agree with Stephanie that there are benefits of packaging them together as they are, and that is that they have some relevance to most organizations. Certainly to my university. If we only had the ones related to human well-being, for instance, if that was the extent of the SDGs, it's quite likely that my university wouldn't have engaged with it in the way that it has. So it's a true benefit as a communication tool that it has this widespread applicability, and this has truly promoted the engagement of many organizations. Whether we're seeing the results that we desire is another question, but it's certainly been useful in that way, as giving each organization some direction of the ways in which they can engage and how they can choose to prioritize actions. Yeah, so, well.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do you have anything to add about if it had any impact in terms of numbers, anything in your research from 2015 until today? What have the SDGs actually done? Do you have any input into that? David?
I beg your pardon. Well, certainly we can see some Austria, particularly with respect to energy in particular, which I agree with Sophie is a priority for Austria in particular. I think that the Development Bank has well in terms of that particular priority. In other countries, I'm relying on UN data largely. Unfortunately, the SDG site is becoming a rather poorer source of information than it used to be. Early on, they provided a lot of data, and this is really being reported much more minimally at the global scale now. So yes, there are still positive trends, although the positive trends flowing on from the goals, these are certainly slowing, and in many cases where we were on track to reach targets, we are now not. And COVID-19 is a further impediment to the attainment of many of these goals. Yeah, in terms of, well, the partnerships for the goals, well, here we see some worrying signs: increasing nationalization, nationalism within many countries, withdrawal of important players from international agreements. This is all of these types of actions, which are becoming rather widespread also within Europe, is a rather negative trend, I would say, at present. So some positive progress, although many of them are slowing, and some well, steps backwards, I would say, in recent years.
Thank you. And last and not least, Sophie, do you have any inputs into what the SDGs have done from 2015 until today?
Yeah, what I have seen also transitioning from the Millennium Development Goals to the SDG, Millennium Development Goals, where from a working party perspective, they were just in a very small community of decision makers that work with the UN actually on the agenda, so to say. And now that the SDG became this universal agenda where every single country, be it developing, emerging, or is obliged, or let me put it this way, has committed to show progress on all the SDGs, even within the SDGs became relevant to most state actors. So it's not just one ministry, for example, anymore that communicates with the UN that knows about it, but it's in every single ministry we know. There is someone that has to, or most of the units have to report, track, and look what they do for the SDG. So obviously the same account for state actors, or partially working with the state, which already increases awareness, but this just shows that the SDGs got broader, and the Millennium Development Goals were not as accessible as the SDGs are now. And also with the sub-targets and initially planned catalog, it would be, if it's actually done, better, easier to do tracking, as I've seen, as you have every goal actually tangible sub-targets, right, that you can go along with within your country, but you can track how far along we are coming. The data is not on point, that's another thing, but the possibilities are there. They weren't there before. So all in all, we're, as Stephanie also said, and we're not there yet, not even, but in general, the ownership is way more global than it has. If that results into action and into achievement is a whole other question. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That is the end of our panel. I would like to thank all of our panelists. I think it was very, very insightful, and as well, we were able to see very different types of opinions today, which I think is the value behind the panel discussion, which is why we're all here, so that we get insights from different perspectives and as well different sectors. So I would like to thank all of you for being here today, and for our delegates, we will start again with the closing in 3 minutes. So I urge you to just hold on. And to our panelists, thank you very much again. And I hope to see you again, perhaps at our next YouthSpeak Forum.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.